2022 Park Commission meeting. A motion to approve the minutes for July.
I'll move approval of the minutes with just one thing that I saw, because Julia is not here. In her comments in 5A, which is Stoner Prairie, comments from Park Commission members, just because she's not here to point this out, it says Julia Ratifryer spoke of how budget numbers were determined, W-E-R-E, instead of where. This is on page 3.
Yeah, it's the second bullet point under comments from Parks Commission members.
Second bullet, okay.
Right. I didn't see anything else, but I will welcome friendly amendments from anyone, especially in those comments on the Stoner Prairie there, if anyone wants to.
I had some things to suggest. And the first thing is right in the very first line. Scott Endel introduced Mr. Rob Stein, who provided an overview of, and instead of saying this updated plan, I think it should say the July plan. So it's clear we were looking at one that was presented and all the comments relate to that. And then further down, there's a series of bullet points where it says there was much discussion with a summary of said discussion. And the second bullet point where it says remove trail on far southern portion, I think it'd be more clear if it says removed east-west trail on far southern portion of the site. The next bullet point, the existing playground in Stoner Prairie Park, although dated, is functional and will remain, but will not be replaced. I'd like to insert that was stated. A few more points down, it says moving the hub activities closer. We were actually keeping the hub activities closer. We moved them the prior month. So now we were affirming that we were keeping them there.
What do you want it to say?
Keeping the hub activities closer to the future restroom facility.
Should say keeping instead of moving?
Moving, yeah, because we moved them in June.
Okay.
And so we're keeping them in July. And then further down where there are comments from each Parks Commissioner, on my own, it's second or third sentence says, incorporate triangle strip to the south, and that should be to the north, into our prairie plan, and then leaving everything else as is, but adding a sentence of where we talked about, if the prairie's extended into the tot lot, that may direct kids to use the crosswalk on Scarlet Drive. Those were mine. Is there anybody else who?
If the prairie is extended
You can have that if you'd like it.
into the tot lot, then that may direct kids to use the crosswalk.
On Scarlet.
And Sue did provide those comments in written form to me, which is very, very helpful, and I can, if you're all good with them, then I can just include them in the minutes.
Everybody else think they're appropriately represented in their
Chris,
descriptions?
were you happy with yours, because yours were a little obscure?
Yeah, I expected that, and I didn't see anything contrary to what I thought, so.
Okay.
Okay, I accept that as friendly amendment. Do we have
Okay.
a second?
We didn't have a second. I didn't ask for a second.
I'll second.
Second? All right. I'm a little out of order, but those in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? The amended minutes are carried. So public appearances, we have Mark Jones of the Fitchburg Veterans Group. Is this the seat?
There's two seats, it doesn't matter.
Or I think the camera.
I'll keep them close.
What Matt said. Man said one or the other.
Oh,
Okay, I
okay.
didn't hear
Oh,
that.
we thought this was the only one. with
Yeah, we
camera.
thought that we set that up.
Okay. Go right ahead.
I just here is an update from the Fitchburg Veterans Park. We did acquire the flagpoles. They were gifted to us, and they are now in the city's possession. And they'll be placed in the next month or so. And there is a couple monuments that and benches that we're in the process of completing the purchase of, and they'll be added along the trail around there. And there's a gazebo that we are looking at. We haven't got an exact picture of it, but these are some of the renderings that we just aren't at that point yet. But it would be to provide shelter for the kiosk. There'll be a veterans kiosk that you'll be able to look up any Fitchburg veterans or any veterans from the database that the Pentagon has. And that's kind of where we're at. I just wanted to touch base with everybody here to make sure that I hate to make Scott keep coming and doing all the work, so we wanted to touch base, make sure that you guys are okay with what we've done so far and where we're going. So,
When you say new flagpole,
poles, there'll be 3 poles.
okay, because there was one out there already for a long time, right?
Yes, there was one. It'll be behind the monument. There'll be 3. The existing one will carry the flag of the service that Mr. Schley was in.
Okay,
He was in the Marines, so that will carry his flag.
okay.
But there'll be a state flag, U.S. flag, state flag, and a MIA flag. The U.S. flag is, of course, higher per code. So, and they were donated by Oak Bank. And we took them down. They came out of the Zor Shrine building that's being demolished. And, very, very nice, expensive poles. So we retrieved them and we'll reinstall them. So, any questions or any concerns or any thoughts you guys have? I'll try to keep coming occasionally as we come, just to keep you guys posted.
I may be coming to your meeting next week. It's
You're welcome.
got my calendar cleared.
And I think Anna was planning on stopping over to you.
Yeah, and
1 o'clock at the park, unless the weather's
Unless the weather's
poor, and then we meet at the building across the way.
Right,
At,
the vet house.
yeah.
And I know, was it you that met with David out there the other day?
Yes.
Okay. I know David was, said that he had met a couple.
At Heidi Reynolds and I.
Okay. So were you pleased with what we've done to this point?
Well, yes, I don't have any complaints or problems.
Okay. We're trying to do this as frugally as we can. We're not using any city dollars. It is our plan not to use any city dollars. It'll be all volunteer dollars from the donated dollars. So
Okay.
we don't
thanks.
want to put a burden on what you guys have planned for the rest of the parks by asking for any dollars. You have plenty of things to do with what you have. So, any other concerns or questions? Scott, anything?
No, I think, I appreciate you coming in, Mark, keeping us up to speed with what's, I'm
Yeah.
trying to hook into the launch, I'm trying to launch the meeting here.
Okay, cool, all right.
I'm just not having any success.
Yeah, I know you had spoke with David about if we get the kiosk, what type of floor that should have in there.
Oh, I don't know that we had any strong opinion about it, just that it would be something durable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool, that was a concern, I just wanted to make sure there weren't any concerns.
Yeah, well, and I tour parks with Heidi as we just make plans, and we were going to do some, and then I got a call, so we just decided to
Try that.
make that our plan. So it's not that we came there to make any official
Yeah. no,
inspection or proclamation, but it was good to get the
Always welcome.
information, yeah.
So, and I think it's turning out very, very well. So, cool, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Any other?
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Any other public appearance? Everyone else is scheduled to be here. Okay, review and approve agenda, a motion to
I'll-
approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda. I see that we have people here for 5A and 5B, and on Zoom, 6A. So, let's see. How about, how about if we, would it be worthwhile to move 5C down below 6A? So we go 5A, Brian Munson, 5B, the Fitchburg Greenway Pilot Program, and then jump to 6A, the B-Cycle Program, and then do the drinking fountain at Dog Park?
Yeah. Do we have a second about,
That's my motion.
okay, got
So
it.
what was it again, CC?
We're just gonna delay 5C, which is the park budget on the drinking
So
fountain.
what will be the order, I guess?
Well, just pulling that one out, 5C out, and put it below 6A.
I'll second.
Does that make sense, Scott?
So we're taking 5C out and then,
Yeah, shifting it down a little bit
It just moves down one
for the,
spot.
oh, I.
Three items
I
as
follow,
speakers.
I follow, yep,
Okay.
yep. So you have the speakers now.
All in favor of the adjusted agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Our adjusted agenda does carry. So, 5A. R-160-22, request by Brian Munson, agent for Hartoon Brothers Incorporated, to subdivide properties into 18 total parcels with a total of 13 buildable lots to be rezoned from the AT Transitional Agriculture and RD Rural Development Districts to the PDD-G, G1, GI?
That's a lot of.
That's a lot.
Lot of information.
That's a
there.
lot.
I know we have Dan and Jonathan here from the development team, and certainly we're thankful and appreciative that they're appearing before the Park Commission. And really, again, if I might remind the Park Commission of what our role is here is to take a look at the public park spaces, and certainly I included in your packet, if we start on page 7, they've got the Hartung property, and everyone knows where that is, correct, on the corner of Sayin and Lacey. And then they have identified the park space that they're looking to dedicate to the city. And really what I think they're trying to create here is the trail system through the development, but certainly how it's connected to our other trail systems. Certainly they've got a couple.
You keep falling on Zoom, or what?
What's that?
You keep falling on Zoom? It just keeps disconnecting you, or what? I'm hoping you can.
I don't know. I don't know how to do it.
Well, I saw you in twice.
I've been trying to get on, but I don't know how. And I appreciate your assistance.
So where, you go to your email? Is that how you got in before?
That's how I've been trying to get in. Yeah.
So click the link.
I apologize. Thanks, everybody, for your patience.
It says Jeremy Crosby is talking. Is he monitoring? And
That's the owl.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so let's,
Share screen. Right?
well, I think you need to, let's go over to where you have the maps
Where, I
and
have,
let's pull that up first.
where would that be?
Is it in Chrome, did you have it? Where were the maps?
In the packet.
All right, well, let's pull up the packet and then make sure that's up first of all. All right, back to Zoom. Word. Right there. That guy. We'll go over here, share screen. Where's this guy? Oh, there it is. Double click. And hit share. Didn't like double click. There we go.
So, oh, look at that.
Wow.
Proceed. I think they would have realized that I was struggling out, but maybe not. Okay, so we're getting to the,
Don't make it too small, Scott.
yep, that's a good point. Thank you, Patrick.
That's good.
Down.
That, yeah, right there.
Maybe one more. So here is their development. And again, you know, the idea of the trail system that they're looking to put in that will connect. And regionally, if you look at the, you can look on page 9, which I really appreciate, is they've got their development kind of identified there, and then how it's connected to the other parks, trail systems, those kinds of things. So I think they've done a really good job of keeping in mind our goals of seams and those kinds of things. And certainly they've identified, because they will have some residential areas, they'll have some smaller parks for the residents, but certainly if you're familiar with the area, there's larger parks in the area, so they can certainly, residents here can traverse to the larger parks in the area to get larger experiences that they may have with tennis courts and basketball courts and those kinds of things. One thing that I did encourage them to do, that they're going to be doing a lot of grading potentially on the site, so I really wanted them to try and be creative and see if they couldn't create some topography within the park area and the trails. And certainly they can't do it on the public spaces, but to do the best they can to try and make the areas as exciting and different as possible. And then maybe just to go back, to circle back, that really, at this point, the Park Commission is, looking for comments on how you feel about how they've set it up, and any kind of comments that you might be able to provide to them that they can take back with them and include and improve the facility or their project. They also included some service radius boundaries and things which are really helpful. And then actually I just received the referral sheet and all of that today, so I did include that in your agenda, and you can see that the Plan Commission has reviewed it on the 19th and they approved it, and we're appreciative that they came to the Park Commission for your thoughts.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to approve.
Question.
Go ahead.
In your previous meetings, did you say that according to the master plan for this area, and I was on that steering committee, the future transit train station, if that does come to be, would be into the gray area just below the word Greenway on page 7? So not in the Greenway, it wouldn't change that. A train station would be into the next, or a future phase, which is now grayed out.
That's correct.
Okay.
Certainly could be, yeah.
Okay. All right, we should have a motion to approve and a second, and we can discuss all we want, right? A motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, go.
Just a quick question. Is this going to the bicycle?
Steve, you gotta come up here, Steve.
Is the bicycle committee reviewing the trail plans?
Let's take a look at the
Is it on the referral
referral
slip?
sheet. Yeah, I don't see the bicycle committee on there.
Okay, so just as an interested observer, we've had a lot of problems with things coming in that are designed by people who don't ride bicycles, for people who ride bicycles, and there have been avoidable mistakes made. And so I would recommend that you recommend that it go to the bicycle committee to review the trails and the connections and so on.
When do you next meet?
I'm not on it.
Oh, they?
They meet in September.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, this is Phil. I staff the bicycle committee. Their next meeting will be the first Tuesday in October. It's every even month.
October.
So I don't know what that
Oh.
would do to the timeline of this
I'm
resolution.
sorry, I was thinking of a different committee.
Is that the one you mean though, bicycle committee?
Yeah, about the date. Failing that, if you want, you could ask privately Mike Fitchburg to review it.
Yeah, that might be good.
Our alder is not, Julia, our alder is Julia Radafrada on here, and she is not attending this meeting. She's unavailable, so she would, I think, be the one, if it has to go through council amendment to add another committee on, it's not up to us.
Well, I think to Steve's suggestion
Or
that
maybe-
we can get it to the bike Fitchburg group to have them take a review of it.
Yeah. Or the alder who's on the bike committee could ask.
If I could.
Please.
Jonathan Stevens with Sarah Investments.
Please introduce yourself too.
Yeah, Jonathan Stevens with
Oh, you-
Sarah Investment. If I could I suggest maybe the bicycle committee review the final engineering drawings when we come in for the final plat, just to allow the council approval next week of this is a preliminary plat, so we haven't even engineered the trails at this point.
Also not up to us.
Any
Well,
ideas as to how that would work, Katie, Christopher?
That makes some sense. My only concern is that if you begin, diving into too much engineering and, an important connection or something is missed somewhere, that could have ripple effects that go throughout your entire layout, that frankly you probably wouldn't want to go back in and redesign. So that's my only concern with that. I understand wanting to keep things moving, and that's certainly important, but
We'd certainly be open to inputs, if we want to offer a courtesy review at this point, and then we'll be sure to make sure to, get their review once we have the final engineering available too.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Bike Fitchburg, they're certainly available to make sure that we don't make those, mistakes, if you would, and we don't want to slow the process. So I think if we can get it to them for a review, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, so that we can just, there may be other remarks people want to make right now, but as far as those specific things, you're saying, Scott, that Bike Fitchburg, you can facilitate Bike Fitchburg taking a look, making sure everybody.
We welcome their input.
Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
No, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, all the better. And as long as you're here, did you want to make any type of presentation? As long
I
as
certainly can. We're excited about this plan. The CDP, the Comprehensive Development Plan, has previously been approved by the council. So just to catch those up that have not been involved in that, the features of this development include 450 units of multifamily residential on the western extent of the site, with Blaney Road dividing basically the site north to south, and 10 commercial parcels over to the east. We're focusing on medical lab uses, trying to attract those types of users. So it's exciting to see those types of opportunities available on that side of the site. And then the trails really create a great connection here with the rest of the city, trying to work in green space and public open space. So Dan might have more to add.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Dan Day from D'Onofrio Kaki, representing Sarah Investments tonight. And just to expand a little further, what Jonathan was saying is that the trail system is very important to this the system. You know, we can see and envision these trails being used not only just by the residences on the west side, but all the employees on the east side during the daytime. You know, I live in an area that has a fairly high employment, and you see people walking at lunch or with their break time or doing whatever, and I can see these trails being utilized tremendously by that kind of you know, those kind of uses quite a bit. This plan, you know, we have some wetlands on the west side, we have some wetlands on the east side, but the wetlands to the southeast are what are really the prime wetlands in the area. The ones on the east, north, they're more farmed wetland kind of thing. So we're really trying to create this nice large buffer through there to supplement the wetlands and the trail system, and then the stormwater working around that, and all three of those kind of working together to create this real neat buffer on the east side. The west side, obviously, you got the railroad tracks there, but then you know, we have the trail along there and the stormwater, and then the residential starting. So I think it's layered very nicely. You know, just as a little defense of the bike plan that is currently on there. Brian Munson, who did the creation of this plan, is a big biker himself, so he's had many experiences with that. So we're excited about this plan. This is a great opportunity for everybody involved, including the city of Fitchburg. This is a huge expansion area for the commercial employment base that you know, there's a lot of people that have been knocking on the door, and it's exciting what the potential could be.
Okay, thanks. Heidi, I see you have a question?
Well, so I'm trying to determine here what exactly is the area that is adding park. Is it that, so I'm sorry, there's a lot of stormwater area. Is that part of what's being developed also, or is that already existing? And then is the park that's being added, is it both the open public space and the small public park area?
So for actual dedicated park, it's the two smaller areas in the central and then the northwest corner. So you go to the next page there, the medium green, I would call it. Those two areas, public park, public open space, are what's formal dedication of what you would consider parkland. The other areas are being dedicated to the public for many uses, including trails, stormwater. There's an interceptor sewer that's got to go through on the east side. Those sorts of uses across all of that.
Okay, so and I apologize if this was obvious or said and I missed it. So what's here is suggested uses, not necessarily, so in other words, it's land that's just being dedicated to the city, and these are suggested uses, but realistically the city can kind of do what they want with it. Is that what we're talking about?
In some context, yes, but I think what we're looking at is that the stormwater is a necessity and a requirement of the ordinances and the state statutes that we have to follow. The open space there is partially required because of the neighborhood plan through there, so we're working with that system to create the trail system through it in those areas. So, you know, the thought process here on the east side is that trail is going to supplement with the interceptor that has to go through there to provide access for the interceptor, but also to provide the trail system that's we think will be a huge amenity to this area. So it's kind of it's a triple use area is what it is, and smart land use.
And then so the stormwater that amount is required. Is that required because of all of the buildings, the office buildings and everything that's there? So that would be required by the development that's there?
That's correct. We will, we've gone through and done a preliminary stormwater analysis, and that analysis shows we need roughly these areas to be able to do that. When we start taking the next step, we'll work on final design of that, final layout, looking at, a lot more design detail of that information. But that certainly is next on the agenda once we get through these approvals.
And then is that typically how it's done, that the land that legally has to become stormwater then becomes part of what gets donated to the city in terms of, I guess, sort of the trade-off for developing?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the standard requirements of every land development that I've worked on, that you have dedication for parks, you have dedication required for stormwater to meet the ordinances that are there. Typically on larger development sites where you have public roadways and everything of that sort, you have public stormwater facilities, and Fitchburg follows that, which most municipalities in Dane County do.
Okay, thank you.
Bears noting, I think, that in the calculation of the parkland fee for dedication, or fee in lieu of dedication, that the stormwater does not apply to the actual fee, right? So
That's
it
correct.
doesn't offset the fee.
That is correct.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't insinuating anything untoward. I was just trying to understand. So thank
Yep.
you, I appreciate the explanation.
Yep, no problem.
All of the light green that we're seeing on there is considered stormwater area and not credited to parkland dedication. The darker green there, those two, what's labeled as public park and public open space, that's your parkland creditable areas, right?
I would say that certainly the public parkland are credit towards the parkland dedication, but also the residential trail
Okay.
corridor, greenway, and even to the point of, if you recall, to the east, high-quality wetlands, where the city has in the past provided a portion of a credit.
No, we have not.
The city has.
Never has, no.
I disagree.
Well, look it up.
Yep, they have. And again, to your point, Heidi, there's a diversity within the park system. Certainly, we have open play spaces, but these corridors, environmental corridors, are really a benefit to the park system, and certainly the stormwater facilities. They do have a function, but the idea of trying to take advantage of that function to create habitat and those kinds of things that are pleasant to walk by, and those kinds of things. So it's kind of a diverse park system within its development, which is really good.
I can see the area, let's say to the southwest there, that's marked as residential trail, south of those line of ponds on the west side, as being creditable because it's a large green area, and also to the southeast over there where the other word greenway is, at least on page 7, away from the other stormwater ponds, could be creditable depending on just what the land is right there. But I would figure that everywhere around, surrounding all of the stormwater ponds would be not creditable, just it's stormwater area. But I'm thinking maybe it'd be appropriate to have credit for those open areas that don't have stormwater, and even right in the center, you have these two trail areas where it's marked as.
You were looking at page 7, the marked trails.
Yeah, those marked trails
Like-
might be creditable also, I would think.
Well, that's in they go through the wetland buffer. Well, that's
It
my.
depends on the ground.
Yeah, well, and my question about what's shown in the column on the right, which is east, if I'm oriented correctly.
Yeah.
If you go down the list, obviously the stormwater, farm, wetlands, those first two items are not relating to park credits. The wetland buffer, it says 8.8 acres. Is that 8.8 acres of parkland credit? all 8.8.
Could potentially be, yeah.
And then below that, it's listed that it's the 5.1 is 75% park credit. Then we're back down to wetland buffer, another 2.1 acres, and that's all park land.
And again, I think these are things for discussion, but certainly as the Park and Rec Director, I value that it's not just always open green space, that there's other different diverse park amenities and systems and things like that. And
I'm not taking issue with it, I just want to make sure I understand what I'm
Yep.
seeing.
Yep.
And I can clarify too, because these lands aren't public lands right now, it's hard to get on the property and see what's there. So I've had the opportunity of getting a tour with the art sons. And there's currently corn growing in the wetland areas. And so it's quite stable and it's not marshy necessarily, but it's decent, it's beautiful. In fact, if you go down there, there's quite a few old growth trees and some groves of tall native grass and that kind of thing.
When you say wetland, corn growing in wetland, is it DNR delineated wetland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
then it's officially wetland.
It's not a,
That's why we have it marked as wetlands.
it's marked as it is.
Yeah, that's that light blue area around it. It says farm wetlands right there on the right side.
Yeah.
Patrick, that's
Yeah.
the area that Jonathan's talking about.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna repeat and emphasize my belief that there has never been any credit for wetland. It's been discussed and proposed a couple times in the past, and I remember what they were, and it didn't go through because of reasons.
Sarah Schroeder.
I only had two quick comments. One, I really liked the trail, just that I agree with the comments of how within the commercial space they would get readily used, that I thought that was really nice. And then the other one was just a question where I think in the past, alongside the public park that's designated, it's listed kind of just really butted up to that stormwater. And I thought in the past we potentially had conversations when those parks were proposed from a safety perspective, and if there was any safety concern being so close to stormwater, or if that's been already thought of and it's not a concern in this scenario.
So any stormwater basin that we build has to be done with safety in mind. So any open water has safety benches to it, and that sort of thing to allow for recovery if you accidentally walk into the water. So that is part of the DNR standard requirements for construction of any stormwater basin. And then you've just got to make sure you build slopes that are acceptable from a maintenance standpoint and from a traversing standpoint. So I think Fitchburg has a maximum of 4-to-1 slopes on any of the steepest parts of stormwater basins. So yes, safety is definitely in mind whenever you're designing and constructing a stormwater basin.
One other thing to add, we've met with the fire chief for Fitchburg, and he requested the strip of land that you see labeled as wetland trail connection, 0.6 acres, which is designed to allow fire apparatus or emergency equipment to get in there if somebody were to be needing that type of service.
Do we have a total then of all these acreages of how much proposed acreage is to parks? Parkland dedication?
Scott, have you done any calculations so far on?
I don't have
requirement
calculations.
versus-
I know that that the group has done sort of preliminary calculations, but again, I think it's, I don't want to.
Katie and Christopher are saying it's about 22.
And I'm showing 19.9 on the latest numbers I've seen, so not bad.
All right.
Have there been any revisions to the layout of the buildings from the previous versions that we've seen?
Which sides are you referring to? The commercial
anywhere.
side or the multifamily? There might have been some small tweaks on the multifamily side, I think, under the CDD process, but it was fairly minor. We have not made any tweaks on the east side. That's all pretty conceptual at this point in time on the east side.
And that was the idea of that is not necessarily where the commercial buildings are going to be built or what they'll look like. It's
Right.
just, it's commercial. There
And
will be
it
buildings.
could work, yeah, and it depends on what user comes forward
Right.
too, right? So that's what you gotta be flexible and open for. And this plan actually really does that well, because we got that center roadway, and then really everything from there to the greenway to the east can be flexed somehow and work. But the important part is we got the trails along the outside, right? So,
But you're saying the residential is pretty much the way the buildings will be?
yeah, I mean, if everything
It's-
keeps going through, yes.
It's subject to whoever buys those parcels, obviously,
Correct.
but the person that we have in mind right now, assuming the park fee ends up where we think it is, I think he's probably interested in closing, on those parcels. He provided that alignment of the buildings, so.
And then Blaney Road right there that exists right now, coming off of Lacey Road, is a Botanical Drive at least at Lacey at the same intersection? Or?
It is very close.
So it may shift a little bit?
Yeah,
At least
it's-
from what is currently there for Blaney.
Yeah, it's like a half a roadway width or something. It's not far, but it's real close to that.
And then Blaney Road goes straight north-south right now, so as soon as it gets to the first curve right there, then it starts to fall off
Right
of,
there.
of this plan.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Chris?
Is there any kind of anticipated timeline for how long the part that won't be developed, the Hardtime facility, will stay online? Is that sort of indefinitely, or is I assume eventually this development will kind of sweep in there? But
So
Well,
the-
you can speak to that.
Yeah, the official answer to that is at this time it's remaining. There's no plans to move it. It's a significant investment by the Hartongs, and they don't want to take that investment and move it at this point.
no time in the near future.
Correct. And that's why you see that as part of this plan, because, you know, I think the plans kind of talk 10 to 15 years, right? And we can't see an opportunity in the next 10 or 15 years where those would be changing.
Yeah, that's sort of a song.
So we really developed a plan around them to try to make sure we integrate them together so that they can still stay in operation just as well today. Tomorrow is what they are today.
And the Hartung seed plant has been expanding over the many years, and I think there's an expansion going on in there now. I live right over to the west side of this area in the neighborhood,
Yep.
west side of Syene. So we hear activity over there.
The other thing I was going to say, given that the eastern, 2/3 of the site are so commercial, that's basically going to have a population from 9 to 5, I assume, and that's about it. I wonder the usefulness of the public open space in that area. Given that the residential area is going to have potentially, and looks like proposed, will have their own private spaces, and probably going to be more, young professional, not so much family residents, I assume. So they'll have a lot of their own private outdoor space, and then the townhomes will have park space further to the west of that. So that whole area, in my mind, is sort of well served by green space, but the one sort of right in the middle there, I'm not sure will serve a great purpose unless somebody has a use for it in mind that I just am not seeing. So unless that's the case, I wonder if that green space might be more beneficial if it is sort of taken and redistributed along the trail corridor that connects from middle north to southeast, to kind of create like a greenway or a green corridor through there. Right now, it's an awful lot of pavement, and I know that Plan Commission has already approved this, and zoning is what it is, so density is not really our purview here, but it's, having been to the corporate parks on the west side and east side of town, I know what this is going to look like on weekends and weeknights, and it's not very appealing. So, and I don't know that little green speck of park is going to be used very much there. But like you said, the path network will be used by people on their lunch, on breaks, by people passing through. So if that green space is maybe redistributed along that corridor and makes it more of a nice green corridor where people are actually going to be walking through, that green space will be potentially better used, and it'll also serve to break up some of the acres of a parking lot in there. So I feel like if that's something that could be looked at or considered, it could be pretty beneficial.
We'll take a look at it, but I'll counter the argument just a little bit. And that's by saying that I think there are uses that would be potential community type uses. First of all, that's on the far west side of all of this commercial area, so it is accessible from the multifamily. But I just, I recall visiting my sister in Ohio, and we went to some little night thing at a park in a commercial area very similar to this, and it was a band playing or a music event in that area, which then had plenty of parking to be able to go see this and do those kind of different night activities. So I think there is potential night uses for something like that in this kind of setting, especially where you have potential people could walk to it from the west side, right? But you also have potential for people who could travel to it also. So we don't have anything, I think, directly in mind for the public open space, but I think during the middle of the day, it could be very well used just by people out on a coffee break, right, for a quick whatever that might be. But at night, I think there's potential uses that maybe that we might not be thinking of. I think it provides a really neat element as you come into this neighborhood, that you'd have this backdrop with a building behind it, and would be a very nice element for the city. I fear that if you try to jam development right into that corner, you're not going to get equal out of what you're trying to offset because of the little bit different shape. And so in that sense, it makes it a great space for an open space because of that shape of it.
And Dan, that is the highest point of the site.
It's the highest point of the site,
so
yeah.
It provides, the grade will drop off as you go east into the multifamily side there. So could provide some of the undulations that Scott was referencing.
Do you know offhand anything on elevation of that highest point versus out to, let's say, to the east to Hybrid Way or to the west to Botanical Drive? I mean,
there's
land
grade
is pretty
there.
flat.
Yeah, but there's still 30 to 40 feet of grade across there. I mean, it's not like 100 or 200 feet, but there's 30 or 40 feet of grade across there.
I'm driving by a lot of time coming out of my neighborhood, and it's pretty flat.
Yeah, I just remember looking at our engineering drawings, and there's a lot of contours on it. So there is a pretty decent grade going from, because it's a long way from that top all the way down to the highway there.
Yeah. And the white areas that you're showing for Botanical and Blaney Road and Hybrid, is that the city-owned right-of-way? In other words, within that is the street and sidewalk and probably multi-use path and such? Because you have your red dashes that go along there.
Yes,
That's
where the
all
red dashes, you
pathway.
would expand that from a sidewalk to a path. Yep, you're exactly right, and those are the dedicated right-of-ways.
So using the red dashes there, that connects some of these, the green, what did you call it? Different picture. The wetland trail, residential trail, then you switch over to the red dashed line to get to places.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know offhand what the width of any of them, the right-of-way width is?
Yeah, we've, I think we have to go to the 80-foot right away. Is that what it was, Jonathan? Or is it 70? It's 70 or 80.
It was way too wide.
Yeah.
Well, Blaney Road is going to be used.
Probably is going to be 100, I think, Blaney, and I
Right.
think the rest of them, the residential is at least 66, and I think the others are 70 or 80. I can't remember. There was some comments in our preliminary plat about that from Public Works.
And whatever their width, that still contains curb and gutter, sidewalk, multi-use path.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Blaney there being, if you say 100 feet wide, that's wider because of the 40-foot or more 40-foot long semis that go in and out of.
Yeah, trying to
Blaney.
maintain parking on both sides and having bike lanes and all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? All right, so Scott, we have a list of comments. We also had a motion to approve. How do we, you want we need to say approve, but you're going to pass along our comments, and you have heard,
Yeah.
the representatives here have heard our comments, so.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, all right. So then, on the motion to approve, we're ready for a vote? Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, thank you. And thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. So are we on 6B then?
Yes.
6B, okay. And then we have Steve is here.
Losing this already.
I have one on my desk.
Okay, give me a call.
It's all
I'll be in all day tomorrow.
What you were trying to do. All right, Steve.
Okay,
Taking my lead from the chair.
yeah, just, we need to, get mine. Okay, here we are, to find my place on the page. We are at Resolution R 15822, authorizing a Fitchburg Greenway System pilot project. And Scott can give us any update he'd like to, then we'll take the motion to approve. Anything to tell us, Scott? No? Okay. So we need a motion to approve said resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Patrick, and Katie's nodding. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I was pleased to see that the last presenters had designated greenways in their subdivision. This is the project that I presented to you all more than a year ago. So there may have been new members of your commission since then. I am prepared to answer questions on the materials that were included in the packet or the kind of the progress of the project since I last presented it, and whichever you would like me to do. What would be the commission's pleasure?
Would you like to just go ahead and expand on anything in the fact? Yeah.
I could talk about this for days.
Well, how about for a couple minutes?
All right.
An overview?
Yeah.
All right. So I think that this is best motivated by our best covered as a timeline. So it was my hope when you saw this in the frigid spring of 21 that we could get the council to pass a resolution to designate that Fitchburg has a greenway system and that the fish hatchery greenway would be the initial part of it, and that the park staff would work with the park commission to develop a master plan on which segments would be included and how they would be developed in priority order. What happened instead was that the mayor felt that it was important to be in the park and open space plan update. Up until the time that Wade Thompson left the city, it's in the draft. And in the meantime, Bike Fitchburg has been applying for grant funding, and we have one $10,000 grant that was unsuccessful application, one that is still pending, but the AARP Wisconsin did suggest when we didn't get their $10,000 grant that we apply for their $1,000 grant. So instead of signing the fish hatchery segment and up to 2 other segments, we are now proposing a demonstration intersection, which would just have signs around 1 or 2 intersections so that the public and elected officials could see what the whole system would look like by going to that intersection. Since it was funded by ARP, we picked the intersection of Traceway and the Fish Hatchery Greenway next to the Highline Senior Apartments. And it also is part of our equity goals to serve our underserved neighborhoods, our network, healthy neighborhood initiative areas. And so this would be the gateway to the fish hatchery corridor from the Leopold neighborhood. We expect to have enough money to do both Traceway intersection and the Post Road intersection. So this, what I call a mini resolution, just authorizes a pilot. The two main things that the council would do is accept the signage and assign mounting materials, brackets and posts and things that White Fitchburg would buy with this $1,000 grant. And they authorize public works maintenance, street maintenance staff to install them in the right-of-way. And you can see these signs are controlled or determined by the Dane County bicycle wayfinding manual that was developed around 2018. Anna Bijak, our now Assistant Public Works Director, was on the steering committee for that. You can see signs that follow this standard at our bicycle roundabout, the Velo Underround, and along the Capital City Trail. And Madison is now working on new signage under this program along their portion of the Cannonball Path. So you can see what those signs look like, but there are identification signs. You would call them street signs if they were streets, but instead they're for paths, so we'll call them path signs. And if you scroll back just a little bit, this is on the lower left there, that's called a confirmation sign. When you turn through an intersection on the state highway system, you see a sign ahead of you that says, yes, you're still on Route 6, Wisconsin 69. These would also have fingerboards that give distances to important or popular destinations. In this one it says Nob Hill Road because that was going to be the Cap City. That's a Cap City Trail example. And if you go to the next page, that's called a decision assembly. So again, it identifies the municipality and the greenway, and it says go straight if you want to go here, and go left or right if you want to go to these other features. So you see the decision assembly when you approach the intersection, and as you leave the intersection, you see the confirmation assembly. If you go on to the next, to the map, this basically shows that we have two confirmation assemblies, and this, you can put the decision assembly and the confirmation assembly back to back. And so we're planning on doing that, so there would be one of these back-to-back things north and south of Traceway, and again north and south of Post Road, and at each of the intersections there would be the crossed identification signs. So the art of all of this and requires a public process, which is laid out, is that you go to the neighborhood and you go to the users of the thoroughfare and you ask them, what are the important destinations to you? And since we are really eager to show the residents of the Leopold neighborhood the cool things that they can find along Fish Hatchery Greenway just to the south of where transit stops in Fitchburg, like the senior center, the Veterans Park, the splash pad. All of these things are things that many of those residents don't know exist. And so it's going to be very important to figure out what exactly should be on these destination and decision fingerboards. But for this, we are going to figure it out in the engineering department. So, and it is a pilot project. So we will not be employing neighborhood navigators to engage citizens and ask them what are their priorities and what do they think are the most and least important destinations and things like that. But that will be done for the whole system.
Okay. I have a question.
Shoot.
The Board of Public Works, it says August 1st failed. What were
Their motion failed. They voted 2-2 and with one person missing to recommend approval. And so with a tie vote, they are making no recommendation.
A tie fails.
Well, do you recall any remarks,
I know
positive?
all
I bet
about
you-
what they said.
Burned into your,
Yeah.
into your memory.
So, first of all, I patently disagree with these criticisms. So I hesitate to even bring them up because they're so. One of the people who I believe is kind of an enemy of bicycle infrastructure, I mean, that's the way it's been, is saying, well, we got negative comments about the green and white wayfinding signs that were recently installed around the city for motorists. Okay, so I say, well, that's $30,000 that got put into that project. We need to also serve bicyclists, perhaps even more so. Because if you go 2 miles out of your way because you missed a turn or because you couldn't find the entrance to Goff Park on your car, it's no big deal. But if you're doing it on a bicycle and you're going up a hill, or you went down a hill and now you have to go up a hill, it's a big deal. So bicycle wayfinding is very important. But he said, well, all of the people around here, so this person has lived in the city for many years, he says, we all know where everything is. Why do we need these signs? So I don't agree with that. What were the other things? Yeah,
Well,
those were two of them.
And then on the contrary too, that to one of your earlier points, that there's residents within the community that don't know where some of these facilities are, so it's really going to provide a promotion of the facilities and the amenities that we have within the community. So it's
When you compare the cost of the signage to the cost of the trails themselves, which in some cases were built by the city, in other cases were dedicated by developers, we're talking about millions of dollars in this 36-mile trail system. And 36 miles does not include every path connecting from a neighborhood into the Cap City or Cannonball, or into a, like out of the Quarry Hill neighborhood onto Lacey Road from the Granite Circle, a cul-de-sac. It's counting the ones that are at least half a mile long that we would want to name and put wayfinding signage on. And I will tell the Park Commission a story, and tell me if I told you this last time I was here. But when my wife and a friend of hers were out doing political campaigning for a fall election, and they were trying to encourage people to vote early in the Leopold neighborhood, and said, you know, you can vote now anytime that the clerk's office is open. Just go down to City Hall, and if you're not registered, you can register on the spot. And the resident was confused. He said, well, I live in Fitchburg. Why would I go down to Martin Luther King Boulevard to vote? And they had to ask the resident, don't you know that we have our own City Hall? And of course they didn't. The transit doesn't come here. The transit goes north, and they're oriented to grocery stores to the north and to drugstores to the north, and not the ones that are here in Fitchburg that are just south of them. And now with the completion of the Fish Hatchery side path from High Ridge Trail to the Beltline Frontage Road and the new bridge over Nine Springs, it's just an easy, safe, comfortable walk to some of Fitchburg's great assets, like the splash pad, the all abilities playground, the dog park, the Veterans Memorial that you just heard about. Perhaps more important, 3 medical clinics, 4 banks, a grocery store, a little Hispanic groceries and restaurants, lots of restaurants, dollar store. So all of these things are on that corridor, and you don't need a car to get there. So we got a very good reception from the Bicycle Committee. We got a very good reception from you all last time. I think it's kind of a minority view.
Okay, and Heidi, I see there's a question. Heidi Reynolds?
Oh, I remember one other objection, but you can go with Heidi first.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Well, so I guess in playing devil's advocate here, you kind of reinforce my point. I mean, I feel like, I guess I don't really see a need for these signs, because at what point do you draw the line? I mean, you can't put up a sign for every piece of information, every building, every amenity that a city has. You know, Google exists. A lot of people have GPS, and I feel like, sure, sometimes somebody's going to miss their turn, and it can be inconvenient, but I worry, that the more signage you have up, the more distracting it is to drivers, and B, I really don't know that I see a need for it, and the fact that the Public Works Commission, it failed them, I guess that sort of gives me pause as well, because that's sort of, you know, their bailiwick, and so I guess I'd be interested in hearing what their other concerns were. But I guess I don't have a horse in this race either way, but I guess I'm not really convinced that these signs are necessary at this point. Thank you.
That was exactly the opinion of one person on the BPW meeting.
Yep. So the last objection was that this is a pilot project, and you'll see in the resolution that it says
About 6-1 down, no impact
oh,
on
it's
city
a
budget.
whereas. Yeah. The last whereas clause, approval of this demonstration intersection does not commit the Common Council to approve additional steps, and that the Common Council may in the future order the signage approved hereby to be removed. So theirs was basically a disbelief. It says, well, if we approve this, then we have to approve everything. And it was more of a slippery slope argument. So to Heidi, I would say, one of the things about this pilot project, which is going to be at no cost to the city, no direct cost, is that you'll be able to see if it's useful. And if people say, oh, that's terrific, when are they going to do my street or something like that? On the other hand, if people call their alders and say, why is the city paying for this? Why are we wasting money on these signs? So you'll have an opportunity to figure out whether it is important. But my argument to those people who are in the Board of Public Works and to Heidi's devil's advocate is these signs are not meant for you, and they're not meant for me. I know where to find everything. I've mapped much of Fitchburg's bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. I know how wide the sidewalks are. I know what's on every frontage. It's not for me, it's for people. It's for encouraging people to use the path who don't use it today. All over Fitchburg, people know that there is a multi-use path in their neighborhood or behind their house or something like that, but they do not know where they can go on it. They do not think of it as a system that will allow you to get all around the city. And I would show you a map, except that the map we use is blocked by the city's firewall because it's based overseas. But I really think that the ratio of the new benefits we'll get compared to what we've already invested and what we invest every single year in maintaining this system is, it just makes this such a smart investment of a very small amount of money. And even though we're doing grant funding, pursuing grant funding to get this started, it is our hope that the city council in the future, in the budget, treats people who walk and bike as just important as motorists, and that their needs be considered when we do transportation corridors. I'll say one more thing. Public Works used to have this as part of their bailiwick, but when the Transportation Commission was created in 2004, they took that over, and I was very surprised that this was not even referred to the Transportation Commission, who would, I'm sure, give it a much better reception.
Okay, I think there's two people who want to comment. Sarah Schroeder and then Katie. Did you have a comment?
I do too.
Okay, Sarah, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to say that I did look up my past notes to see as to when this was brought before, as to the concerns that I brought forward. I do think that several of them are no longer applicable with this being just a pilot program, but I did just want to at least bring them up for transparency. The first one was regarding the cost of the signage, which obviously in this scenario for the pilot program is not an issue. The second one was that for the greenway process, you had explained that the greenways needed to be a certain width, and that there were certain areas that wasn't feasible, and so there would have to be significant investment put in to have that actually, to meet that criteria of having the greenway width. The third one was that with our emphasis of Fitchburg wanting to be a tree city and having canopy coverage goals, and also being concerned about drainage and just water being a regular topic, it seemed as though it was something to be considered of putting more pavement in, once again, to reach that minimal width requirement of having to potentially remove trees and adding more impervious surfaces. And the fourth comment that I had previously brought up was just that these signs potentially would be encouraging bikers to use paths that are currently really used by residents within their neighborhoods. So once again, realizing that not for this specific pilot of the Traceway intersection, but just that something for future consideration as this, if this does move forward with, to be a larger project beyond just this pilot, that I think it was something that residents could potentially take issue with, of their neighborhood paths being encouraged for a bicycle greenway space with additional signage. But I also appreciate Heidi's concern of just sometimes more signs does equal more confusion, but wanted to bring those up just because it previously discussed those at the other meeting.
Okay, and Katie, go ahead.
My comment was to be in favor of these, and I understand the concern about there being too much signage sometime, but at the same time, this is a type of signage that is for use by a much broader range of our residents. What about all those people that don't drive a car or can't drive a car? What about my 12-year-old that wants to bike from my house to the splash pad? All of a sudden, they have a sign that will get them there because they don't have a phone. They don't have access to Google Maps. They wouldn't necessarily even know how to use Google Maps to find it or to find their way home, but they can read a sign. And this will help them to navigate and to explore and broaden their use of Fitchburg's facilities and of the broader system itself. So I guess I am in favor of this type of signage just because it's for a much broader range of people than just those people who drive a car. And yeah, you're welcome. And I had one technical question for you.
Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, I'll just add that as a ashamedly infrequent user of the trail system, when I do use them, I'm not very familiar with where they are and where they go, and have at times gone on a much longer bike ride than I anticipated and that my body could handle, but it was because I didn't know exactly how far, my benchmark was that I was going to. So I know pretty well distances on the road, but when I'm biking, I don't know, because obviously the trails are different than the roads, and the distances are different, and I don't have that familiarity. So distance-wise, directionally wise, I'm a 34-year-old adult, and I would find these useful. So I see the value in them.
Patrick, you had
Yeah, I agree with that. That's pretty much what I was going to say, is I see the usefulness in these signs. I believe the pilot project here is right next to Fish Hatchery and Traceway and Post Road area, where it's parallel to the road, so those of us, myself as well, who are primarily driving around, know our way around and everything. And these bike trails are right next to the road, so you know where you are. But many of the bike trails, as Steve mentioned, are through neighborhoods and through greenways and everything, and you can pop out on the end of a trail out to a road and wonder where the heck you are, because you don't recognize that view of the street, and the sign would be useful to point you to what street you have just intersected and where you go from here.
I would like to address Heidi's concerns from the previous meeting. I had the cost water management or stormwater management, tree preservation, and congestion. And there was also, I'll cross that one off because I don't remember exactly what I meant by that. Did I get those right, Heidi?
No, it was Sarah.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
Sarah, sorry, yep, it was Sarah.
Yep. So in terms of the cost, I mentioned that there's about 36 miles of proposed greenway. Of these, 4.2, or we'll say an eighth or a ninth, is this Fish Hatchery Road, and that was that quote was approximately $4,200. So that includes signs and brackets and posts where needed. Oftentimes we would put them on existing posts. So that will allow you to figure out what the overall cost is if we did the whole thing. Now, as you are aware, in the master planning process, think McGaw or McKee, every great idea you have is not funded in the first year. It takes years to implement a master plan. The other thing is that once you have a plan, then people like the ones who are just in here have to implement it. And so if we had this plan in place with a greenway connecting the Cannonball Trail and Leopold School along Post Road and Traceway down to this Fish Hatchery Greenway, then there wouldn't be any question whether the new Hub Neighborhood Center or the Plesco development would have a 10-foot asphalt path in front of them. The plan would say, when you build this, you have to do that. And so in general, we are not going out and doing tree removals or signal movements or utility pool movements, but when we reconstruct, we solve that problem. So the intersection of East Sherrill, or actually Sherrill Drive, and Fish Hatchery Road and the Fish Hatchery Greenway is one of these 5-foot historical sidewalks that the Parks Commission, or the Parks Maintenance crew knows very well, because they have to use sidewalk equipment to plow that path because they have these 2 5-foot wide bottlenecks. When they're going to continue to do that, and people are going to go through. If you come through at the same time as somebody coming the other way, one of you has to wait. But when we reconstruct that intersection, we will fix that because it'll be in the plan. So that's the way these things evolve in terms of cost. As far as water goes, greenways by definition often have waterways in them. Today we have 3 greenways that are on the city map: the Tower Hill, Schumann, and there's one other one. And they all lead into McKee Farms Park. They all transition from underground water, storm water, to daylighted swales to better absorb the water and to slow it down, and to provide a visual amenity and a pleasant place to walk. And they have a path alongside of them to allow people to enjoy that pretty space. They often serve as access points to our parks, like the Tower Hill Greenway from Fish Hatchery Road and the Schumann Greenway off of Schumann Drive into the west side of McKee Farms Park. So water management is very much on our mind. We have a 2% cross slope. They drain into a terrace that's nearby. That's why it's called a greenway. This is a very common form of green infrastructure, is to have a corridor with a path, a swale, and trees. So we're not removing trees. And then in terms of congestion, when folks come from, so yes, people like to live on cul-de-sacs because they can go wherever they want, but there's no traffic on their street. I think that's a similar argument saying, well, I have this neighborhood path that I like, but I don't want a lot of other people using it. I think that these are not the paths that, the ones that we're talking about to be designated as greenways are not the paths that you were talking about, Sarah. So for example, there are paths that lead from the street into I'm blanking on the name of it. Well, let's say Seminole Glen Park, okay, as an example. These are not necessarily through greenways that we would be designated like the Nobel Greenway that runs along Nobel Drive and fronts all of that commercial space and so on. So if we get a lot of people using a multi-use path, then you can make it wider the next time you replace it, or more appropriately, you make a separate cycleway and footway. So we have that in Dane County 2 places. There's 3 places, but I'm not remembering one of them. But at Monona Terrace, perhaps the busiest place on the Capital City Trail, there's a separate footway and a separate cycleway. Likewise, the Timmins Lakeshore Path through the Lakeshore Preserve, separate footway and cycleway because they're so busy. That's the kind of success we want to have, is to have so many people on the paths that we have to make more facilities.
Any other questions? Okay, so we've had a motion to approve, that was seconded. We're ready to vote. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we will, Heidi is noted as, doesn't,
No.
as no? Oh, Sarah,
She said aye.
okay,
Was
She
it
said aye, but for
I'm sorry,
in the wrong
I,
category?
yes,
It- Maybe,
I'm gonna start over again
Oh,
here.
I said I don't vote for it.
Yeah,
Right.
Heidi said no.
oh,
Heidi said no, okay. All right,
so that's 1 no.
1 no, okay, our
And you
motion
have-
carries.
No, 2 no's.
Oh,
Sarah.
Sarah,
also? Oh,
okay, excuse me. Thank you,
Good
And
discussion.
3 yeses,
yes, 1, 2, 3,
so it passes.
it carries.
Archer, didn't you have 7 members?
Julie's not here.
That would make 6.
Yeah, I don't vote unless it's a tie.
Oh, you don't vote?
If
Okay.
there's a tie.
Okay. I thank you
Okay.
for your
Thank
kind
you.
attention.
Yep, thank you, Steve.
Can I ask you an offhand question?
Sure.
Who are you getting your signs quoted through?
City has 2. I have only gotten 1 quote. They have 2 regular vendors, and we got our quote from Decker,
Okay.
but we'll go with both and see.
Try talking to BCE, the Bureau of Correctional
Oh,
Enterprises.
yeah, I know about them too.
Okay.
And then some of our signs, we are interested in the bilingual path etiquette signs that the City of Madison puts out. And you can see an example at Post and the Cannonball. And those are made by the City of Madison Sign Shop, and they're going to sell them to us for $83.
Scott, I was actually wondering, for the, call it the street signs in Fitchburg, does Public Works have some kind of equipment that they create and print?
No, they
Is
buy them.
that's outsourced?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Susan, can you tell me, so the vote was 3-3?
3-2.
3-2. 3 in
So
favor,
Sarah and I were the only 2 that voted against?
yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, we are, now have our adjusted agenda, and so we are moving to. oh,
6A.
Lost my screen, I can't have that happen. 6A is the B-Cycle program for Fitchburg, citing in Fitchburg Parks. Phil Groupie will be speaking. And Scott, is there any introduction you wish to make?
It's all yours, Phil.
All right, thanks, Scott. I don't believe I've actually had the pleasure of meeting most of you yet. I'm Phil Groupie. I'm the sustainability specialist for the city of Fitchburg. Talked with Scott about this a week ago, and we agreed that it would make sense to give the Parks Commission a heads up. So I'll give a quick overview of this in case you haven't had a chance to read the memo yet. There's a couple slides down lower that I'll ask Scott to show just to kind of highlight what it is I'm talking about. So I have been working with a couple of city staff members, the Bike Committee, the Fitchburg Chamber, and a Trek subsidiary, B-Cycle, over the last couple of years, really, in conversations about trying to bring B-Cycle to Fitchburg. What B-Cycle is a bike share program. So similar to other shared transit programs, this is something where you would pay for either a daily, or weekly, monthly annual pass that would give you access to the bicycles that are offered through this program. B-Cycle currently runs this program in Madison. Over the last decade, I think they've had over 1 million, maybe 1.2 million unique bike rides, so it's a really popular alternate transit program. Apologize if my dog is whining in the background. You can hear that. She probably sees a rabbit. But it's been a really popular alternate transit program in Madison, and looking at ways to supplement the metro service that we do get, find other transit opportunities for people in Fitchburg. We thought it would be great to take advantage of our bike-friendly nature, all of our bike trails and recreation opportunities, and give this other opportunity, another alternative for people to get around, especially people who maybe don't have access to cars as easily. So what we're looking at here is bringing B-Cycle down to Fitchburg. This fall, we're starting a phase 1 implementation this fall that's funded through some local business sponsorships and also CETA dollars. And so the black circles here are where we're looking at putting stations for this phase 1 implementation. And then we're also getting some transportation alternatives program or TAP grant funding from the Wisconsin DOT to expand a phase 2 that'll really expand the reach of this program pretty significantly throughout Fitchburg. So the reason that I wanted to bring this to the Parks Commission is because there are several stations here that either because of CETA funding, so we really want to highlight tourism and kind of the visitors recreational aspect of things in Fitchburg, or because of this DOT funding that's not tied to a specific business sponsor, so we kind of have our choice of where to strategically place these stations. We're looking at several Fitchburg parks where we think it would make a lot of sense to place these. So here Scott's going past. This is there have been a few different generations of B-Cycle stations and bikes. What they've graduated to now is what they're calling a V3, version 3. So it's these much smaller, more compact docks that are really modular. You can kind of put them anywhere that there's concrete or asphalt. And then they've shifted to an all-electric bike fleet. This is a really exciting one. Even Scott, if you go back 2 slides actually before we go to the bottom, since they shifted to using electric bikes in their fleet, this heat map and then just slightly above it, the number of riders that have been participating in B-Cycle has really escalated quite a bit. So people are using B-Cycle more, they're riding farther. We're actually finding, B-Cycle is finding that the average trip length is 20-25 minutes. So some of this might be a commute where people are making a couple stops between stations where they pick up and drop off the bike, but some are recreational rides as well with an e-bike, even if you're not feeling like pedaling for a 2, 3, 4 mile ride. The battery assist on this e-bike really makes it a lot more viable. And the heat map below, you might normally think of red being the hottest color, the most activity, but actually this is white with this Strava is what it's called. It's a kind of run and activity tracker app. This Strava data showing white hot is where there's the most activity. So there's actually a lot of bike routes actually going around Lake Monona. People are taking advantage of the trip length offered by these e-bikes. Thanks, Scott. You can go down a couple more slides again now. So what we're looking at for phase 1, you can see here is number 3 there is McKee Farms Park. That's going to be one of our core locations for this program. We think that, 1, it's a central location. 2, for something like this where you're looking at getting bikes between different stations. Ideally, I'd be seeing places that offer a variety of activities. There are destinations. McKee Farms Park certainly offers that with different events and the tennis courts and the splash pad and just the fields there. But it's also relatively close to residential and commercial. So you can see reasons that people would be both coming and going from that station. So bikes should be getting replenished. People are picking them up. People are dropping them off. We're also looking at down the road a Dolly Bike Hub. We're looking at possibly Swan Creek Park as a possibility for phase 1 if we have enough extra bikes that we're able to put some docks and bikes there. That's number 16. And then 17, the Capital City Trailhead just off of Cyan Road is another really strong possibility. But right now, McKee Farms Park is really where we're going to focus for phase 1. And essentially what we're looking at is what's the best, most logical location to put 8 or 9 of these, kind of a concrete, well, we already have an asphalt pad, but then 8 or 9 of these docks. Initially, we had identified spot number 1 there, so that's the largest main parking lot in McKee Farms Park. That northeast corner, you could kind of put it along the grassy area and only take up kind of 1 parking spot that would be utilized for B-cycle. But Scott let me know that parking lot is actually going to be resurfaced next year, so we're kind of shifting our gaze to numbers 2 and 3, a couple of other parking areas that would still be pretty centrally located, fairly visible, and allow us to use existing hardscapes to put these docks in place. If we're able to have enough extra funding to put in a concrete pad and move some docks, then we'd also look at Swan Creek Park, which again is close to residential. It's got that destination characteristic because it's at a park. It's near some new commercial that's coming into Quick Trip and some of the uptown development. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to give a kind of an overview of this, sort of talk about what we're thinking here, and get your thoughts and input. See if you have any questions, any concerns about this. I know that was kind of a rapid overview, but yeah, what do y'all think?
I have a question, Phil. So if we're focusing tonight on just McKee Farms Park, did I hear that you say that correctly? As far as
for sure, McKee Farms Park.
Okay.
Farms Park is one of the core spots for this network that we're going to be building. So definitely McKee Farms Park. Swan Creek is there is strong interest in putting a location at Swan Creek Park.
Okay, so we
ultimately,
okay.
Sorry.
So you want to discuss both, is what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think because of the possibility of Swan Creek, but yeah.
Okay, and then going back to McKee, 1, 2, and 3 didn't mean you wanted 3 stations. Those were 3 options.
Correct.
For 3 options for 1 station.
Correct. So one station, we'd be looking at 8 or 9 of those black bike docks. And yeah, those are just kind of the 3 different possible locations where they could go.
Okay. Those were
And one of those docks roughly takes up about a 30-inch wide or 3-foot wide, we'll say, by 6 feet long space. So if you were going to put 8 or 9 docks down, you're looking at about 20 to 24 feet wide by 6 feet long. So spot number 3 there, especially because of the way the parking spaces are oriented kind of vertically as you're looking at the map here, we could just take up 1 spot on the lower right corner and just have it extending along that greenway. You wouldn't really interfere with any other parking, so it'd be minimal disruption to existing parking spaces.
If that number 3 was shifted to the left, to the corner across from it, going straight to the left.
So that southwest corner?
Yeah, make sure I got my north, south, east, and west. But if it were there, would the same be true? It would not take up any more space? It just seems like it's closer to that central path that might...
It is, and I like that it's more visible there. My only concern with doing one of those 2 western corners is that the length of those number of docks might interfere with people coming into and out of the lot as they're kind of trying to turn to go either right or left. So it might be then if we like that because of the visibility, maybe we take 2 spaces so that we are only doing, instead of kind of a 20 by 3 foot, maybe we do a couple of 12 by 3 foots and just take two parking spaces instead. That's what we would end up doing with location number 2, and that's kind of why it's, despite the numbering there, probably a lower priority for me. It's definitely more visible, but we lose a second parking space. I apologize. I'm going to turn the video off, and I think my dog might just step outside, so I'll stay on the audio here.
Okay.
But you'll just lose me on video for a minute.
All right, and there are questions. Heidi Reynolds, please go ahead.
Hi. So I like this idea. I think this is really a good idea. 2 questions though. So is this going to be, well, I guess 3 questions. Is this going to be funded by the city, or is this something that would be funded by the businesses involved? Number 1. Number 2, is there a hybrid model where there would be both e-bikes and conventional bikes? And number 3, would there be a cost involved for the renter?
For getting a pass. The first question, the second question is the easiest to answer, so I'll hit that right away. This is e-bikes only. They have traditionally done some conventional bikes as well. but they've just seen so much more uptake on the e-bikes. They actually can track with each individual bike which one is being used and for how, how frequently it's being checked out. And there's just much more interest in using the e-bikes, and so it's easier on them to go with a single model rather than trying to balance out two different types. So they are all going to be e-bikes for sure. The third question, the cost of the renter, there will be a fee. I don't remember the exact fee structure. I want to say it's something along the lines of like $2 per hour if you're paying for just a single-use pass, or if you do a daily pass, maybe it would be like $10, $30 for a month, and $200 for an annual pass, something along those lines. What we were looking at, because we don't want this to be entirely cost prohibitive. We want to make sure that we're still also focusing on access and equity, both with network location, but also being able to get these passes, as we're talking with B-Cycle about ways that we can get some subsidized passes as well for people for whom that cost of the pass may be prohibitive. The first question on funding, this first stage that we're doing, the phase 1 implementation, is a $100,000 implementation. Half of that was funded by CEDA, and so one of the locations on the map was up by Hatchery Hill. We're putting that near a hotel, and then we've got this McKee Farms Park location. We're really trying to put these stations back into that travel and tourism to kind of reflect that CEDA investment in this project. The other half of the funding for phase 1 is coming from local business sponsors, and so B-Cycle and Angela Kinderman with the Fitchburg Chamber have been talking to different businesses around Fitchburg to try to get some investments in this program. So businesses that are able to invest in the program, then we try to also put bikes near their location. So they're sponsoring this, but also there's going to be greater access to the system where they are. So some of these phase 1 locations are reflective of that as well, where we've got 8 or 9 docks are going to go at the Limerick, the new senior apartment that's on where Lacey Road kind of curves up north over near Uptown. We're also going to have several bikes over at Agora and the Fitchburg Chamber, because there's an investment coming from them as well. So there's a balance there. For phase 2, I mentioned that we got a grant from the DOT's TAP grant program, Transportation Alternatives Program. That's going to fund 80% of phase 2. So we're looking at upwards of $400,000 to expand this and really expand it significantly throughout Fitchburg. So 320 of that 400,000 will be from this federal pass-through in the state grant. The remaining 80,000, we're hoping we're able to get a lot of business sponsorships as well. We had a resolution in the spring that council did say, if we can't find sponsors, then we have this one-time funding from ARPA and TID, and the city is able to make sure that that's funded. But we're looking at business sponsors again to see who else might be interested in jumping on this.
Okay, but at some point, likely year 3, the city will be on hook for at least a portion of this. And then as far as the maintenance and upkeep of the bikes and the bike pads and all of that, is that something that e-bike would take care of, or is that a city responsibility?
So that one, there is an ongoing maintenance cost, replacing and repairing batteries and bikes, and just we're going to have B-Cycle staff will actually be the ones that are driving around balancing bikes out. If it looks like there are too many bikes at one location or not enough at another, then they'll drive their van around and balance that, rather than us trying to do this with our staff time. And there is a cost with that. That will come partially from the user fees. It'll come partially from ongoing investments that they're going to keep looking for additional sponsors to invest in this, and that will help cover those annual operations and maintenance. The other really nice one is that B-Cycle is really committed to making this happen in kind of the whole Madison area, including Fitchburg. So they have agreed to any of those annual operating costs that are not covered through ridership fees and sponsorships, they are waiving. So they're not going to charge us those annual fees. So we're really just paying the initial upfront capital costs. B-Cycle will continue to own the bikes, so we don't have to worry about dealing with that, but we're essentially paying the quote-unquote purchase fee to get these bikes produced and installed on site. But then beyond that, we shouldn't have to worry about any kind of ongoing maintenance costs. We're just kind of partnering with B-Cycle and the Chamber to monitor this program and keep advertising it, promoting it, and making sure that it's providing the service we intend for Fitchburg. One of the really nice things about this that I haven't mentioned, because Madison has their B-Cycle network, and this is, these are all, any bike goes in any dock, it's kind of city ambivalent. So you could, people will frequently drive to the B-Cycle station at the beer garden at Old Brick Park, and then they'll hop on a bike and ride around for a while, come back to their car. But you could also get on a bike over by the Vilas Zoo. You could ride it down to Fitchburg and drop it off. So this also allows for a little bit more access between cities as well, which is going to be pretty exciting as Madison's network also starts extending south a little bit more down Fish Hatchery and I would imagine also Seminole and Park Streets.
Sarah Schroeder?
Thanks. Just wanted to say that I think this is exciting, that I've used the B-Cycle stations and they're easy to use and pretty convenient to just quickly get from one place to the next without, on a nice form of transportation. And the only other comment I had is for the McKee. I liked Scott's point about not using the parking lot that's being repaved. And for Swan Creek, I just was curious, so it needs a cement pad, right? So if I'm looking at it, I don't think there's a cement pad in either of those locations. So
right.
am I just, okay.
So the reason that Swan Creek is kind of a maybe right now, we really would like to get it there. The other phase 1 station location I didn't mention was Terravessa, is also going to have a phase 1 spot. So with one at Terravessa, one at Limerick, Swan Creek is kind of a nice in-between, sort of a midpoint between those and the Agora Fitchburg Chamber one. So it creates a little bit more network connectivity. But also it is that multi-use location that whether in phase 1 or down the road, I think it would be really nice to have. You're right, there's no concrete pad, so we would have to get a concrete pad poured. Right now, the cost of kind of everything else, the cost of concrete is a little bit higher. So we'd be looking at somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000 is kind of the estimate that I've heard. I don't have a quote, but that's sort of what I'm assuming it would cost to get a pad poured, and it would just be about making sure that we have the funding available to make that happen in phase 1, and if we don't, then we'll push it off to phase 2. But whether it's one of those two corners, I think would be the strongest candidate. But yeah, there's not a spot yet because of the lack of a hard surface.
Got it. Thank you, that's helpful. The only other comment I think is for the spot number 2, I believe there's a rain garden there that may also be a consideration, but.
That may be. I have honestly not been to Swan Creek Park in several months, so I was kind of going off of maps and my best memory. If there's something in the way there, then yeah, we'd absolutely want to work around that. I don't want to tear up anything other than sod to make that happen.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Any other comments, Patrick?
Couple things. I am wondering about number 5 there, the Limerick. That seems kind of an odd location. Why did you pick that one? Or why is that in the phase 1?
So North Point Development did provide a sponsorship for this program, and they were really excited about the possibility of getting some of these e-bikes at that location. I talked with the marketing director from B-Cycle, and she did say that they have seen actually a lot of increasing interest in B-Cycle usage with senior apartments in the last year or two, especially as e-bikes have entered their network of bikes. So I asked kind of the same question. It seemed like an odd spot, and she said, no, actually, this could be a really strong one. This was also, I don't remember exactly when this conversation was. I think she said that she has been in conversation with AARP, and they have reached out to B-Cycle about some possible partnership types of things. I don't remember any details. I don't know if it's, I don't know any details about that, but I know that she referenced AARP also having interest in this type of a thing. So certainly that, she was pretty confident about that being a good spot.
Okay, well, yeah, if you say the property owners or management or something are in favor of this and supporting them, then that seems, that helps it along. But McGaw Park, is not included in any of your phases for consideration.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for calling that out.
I've actually seen people riding their electric bikes through McGaw Park. They live somewhere around and ride through there.
Okay, awesome. So this is definitely not comprehensive. I think I failed to mention that. Phase 1 is pretty well set because we know where the funding is coming from. Phase 2, these are a lot of the places that we have discussed as possibilities. It's not the be all end all, and we want to talk with, certainly we want to talk with alders about the districts they represent. Where do they feel would be a good location to have a station like this, and also talk with staff and folks on committees that we know, the bike committee and Bike Fitchburg will have input in this as well. But I don't expect that the 18 sites here that our final list will entirely come from this map. I'm sure there will be a couple more spots that we haven't thought of yet that it turns out will be really strong places to put a set of docks.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage considering McGaw, and you're looking, I think, for ideal places where, as you mentioned, somebody could drive in there and park and then pick up one of these electric bikes and go right around for a while.
Yeah, I'll absolutely, I'll add that to the map for future iterations.
Yeah, and obviously, one of the factors is having electrical hookup, because since these are electric bikes, I have never ridden one, but I've seen them. These are not just plain bicycle racks, these are recharging stations. So an electrical source for these docking stations is one of your important factors, right?
The docks are really just about locking the bike in place. It's not a park anywhere. It's a park in this specific spot. I'm not sure exactly how it works, if something like pops out of the axle on the front wheel as it goes in there, but the battery on the bike doesn't recharge at the station. If the battery gets drained, then B-Cycle drives around and they will put a new they'll put a new battery on the bike.
Oh, that's
so the stations don't need an electrical hookup.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's good info.
One other question. On your heat map there, if you say that white is the higher activity, then what is red?
So let me amend that. I know that on Strava heat maps, white is the most frequent color, and that's kind of the knowledge I'm using coming into this. This is generated by B-Cycle, so I don't know that they actually did use Strava. They might be using data from their bikes, in which case, I mean, logically, it would make sense that downtown Madison would have the highest frequency of rides.
Well, there seems to be more white and less red in the 2020.
Right. So the one thing I can say there for sure is that what that represents is that 2020, when people were riding a little bit more frequently, I think due to the pandemic, people were at home more. They were just kind of trying to get outside. Maybe they weren't doing as many of their normal activities as much, and there was an increase in riding because of that. And so you see more of these long rides here. I would say, taking a couple more seconds, it's likely that I was incorrect with saying that white is the hottest. Most likely red is, but certainly you see a significant increase in the areas around Madison and off the Isthmus where people have been riding as electric bikes become more integrated into the network.
Well, I mean, like I say, there's more white, but something decreased on the red for whatever that stands for.
I think that's just about short trips decreasing.
Okay, so yeah, maybe it shifted from
longer trips.
Okay, shifted from shorter trips to longer trips.
I think in 2020 there was a little bit less riding as commute and a little bit more riding for recreation, and so those are going to be more extended rides and not kind of the shorter station to station.
Okay.
This is actually a thing that we've been talking with B-Cycle since early 2020, late 2019 about this, and initially I was a little bit skeptical when they were using just manual pedal bikes that this could be successful in a suburban area where things are a little bit more spread out than on the Isthmus. But the data that is coming in that they're finding with the e-bikes is people are taking long enough routes that, you know, it being a mile between stations in Fitchburg is not a significant weakness. I was told that people are willing to walk upwards of 5 to 10 minutes to get to a dock if they're going to use one of these. So that means we can look at, I have not built this yet, but I want to put together a GIS map that kind of shows a quarter mile and a half mile radius around these stations to make sure that we're getting good coverage. But it means that this doesn't need to be right outside somebody's front door. As long as the weather's nice enough for it, they're willing to walk, you know, a quarter to a half mile to get to a dock and then use these. So that's also something I find encouraging with seeing these longer rides here, that I think it gives me more confidence that this can be viable in a suburban setting.
For a couple of these stations, let's say for example 5 and the Limerick there and 6, just as examples, is it a factor then that there is parking available for public parking for people to drive to there and park their car and then take a bike from there? Because I mean, I can't really see that at the Limerick. I don't know if Terra Vesta would have public parking available around the station.
I think each station will have its own characteristics. It'll have its own rider type. Some people will use this for recreation. Some people will use it to get to, you know, if you're going to the Agora, there's a couple of, you know, salon, cafe, yoga places there. Maybe you'll bike there for that reason. From maybe you live near Hatchery Hill, so you walk to one of those. I think if any individual site doesn't have a park or public parking directly adjacent, I don't think that's going to limit its usability. It might mean that if you're looking to drive to a location, you're more likely to go to number 1 or 3.
Okay, yeah, so you would go to some of these and park a car and pick up a bike. Others may be just the people who are already living around, let's say 5 and 6. Those are the users of this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Come on up. Steve wanted to ask a question. Steve Arnold has
Actually, I was going to make 2 comments that haven't come up yet that are related to this point. So the most recent one about parking and riding. Traditionally in Madison, B-cycle does not involve cars. Everybody is walking out of their building and getting on a B-cycle and going to some place for lunch or something like that. In our suburban area, it might be more of a factor, especially with some of these placements. The other thing I wanted to share was that when B-cycle first came out, you pay your daily, weekly, monthly, or annual pass, and you get as many 30-minute rides as you want for free. If you take a longer ride, you pay what in effect is a fine for tying up the bike. They don't want you to ride someplace and sit in a restaurant for 2 hours with your bike, not in a dock. They changed that when they went to electric bikes to 60 minutes, and last year they changed it to 90 minutes. So that's why you see so many people now can take the 13-mile lake loop, because they have the battery power and they're allowed to be out for 90 minutes. It's about an hour ride. So that means that the stations can be farther apart. You still have the issue of people are pedestrians to get to the bikes usually. And what's happening with the 3.0 docks is that it used to be a big sunk cost to have a station, and then the incremental cost of another dock was not so great because they had kiosks. With the 3.0 docks, you can have stations that only have 4 docks. And so you can put them more widely dispersed. And so you could have them, instead of having one thing at Nevin Green with 10 docks, you could have 6 docks at each end of Hatchery Hill. And so you have shorter walks to get to a bike. So I wanted to share those factors that hadn't been mentioned yet.
Thank you. Any questions or further questions or comments? Okay, we have none. Now, we have this as a discussion item. So we need to provide input about these 2 parks. Gotta go back and look at my numbers for the parks that were
2?
Yeah, 4. Well, McKee Farms Park, you're looking for input from us as to which of these locations, location number 2 or 3 on page 28 of 33.
Correct.
What do we think? You've already told us you're taking one out of contention because that is going to be resurfaced. So, Scott, what do you want us? What is your opinion?
Well, I think, certainly I think in listening to Phil and the park commission. Oh, there you go. I certainly, I think with Phil's discussion, the park commission can kind of, I don't think it's going to be a bad, the only thing that I provided is that if you put it at number 1, we're going to be fixing that parking lot, so that wouldn't make sense. So to me, 2 or 3, make perfect sense. I don't know if there's, and you might even defer to Phil and his group. I think at the end of the day, I appreciate Phil bringing it to the park commission and seeing what they think about it. And if anything else, I think we can be advocates for the B-cycle and what's happening. So, I don't think there's a bad choice, if you would. So, except for number 1, just because logistically you put them in, then they're gonna have to be removed to fix the parking lot. So.
Patrick?
Thanks, Scott. And I would echo that. If there's not a strong feeling, what I would do is I would take these options. So we kind of did a drive around to sites last week to pick spots out. I came to Scott. He's like, well, you can't do number 1 there. I don't care if that's your favorite. You're going to have to, pay B-Cycle to come in and take them all out and replace them. So I can take the other sites to the planning team if there's not strong feelings here and just see what people think about the pros and cons of each spot.
Well, and certainly what Sarah provided in site number 2 at Swan Creek, I think you're going to be okay there, Phil. I think there is enough space there, but certainly you're going to want to confirm that you're going to have enough room in order to have that as a viable option.
Yep. Yeah, and it's just, number 2, I think, is going to get a little bit more foot and bike traffic. I think more people maybe park along Crinkle Route there, but there's a little more visibility to people driving along East Sherrill. If you put it number 1, it's right by the park sign. So each one kind of has its strengths and weaknesses. We would just kind of evaluate them and see what seems the best.
Oh, okay. In order here, Patrick?
Okay, in McKee there, I would just point out that number 3 in the tennis court parking lot, that is very dark. At night, it is so pitch black, you can't even see if there's a car parked there. I would actually like that improved by having at least add a street light in that parking lot, because it is very dark, and therefore would be bad as is for bicycle parking there. Number 2, I don't know, that could be okay. At least there's enough lighting along there. In Swan Creek, I think number 2 would be better than number 1, because 2 is by the shelter, 1 is up there by the corner. And as you just mentioned, there is no parking along East Sherrill Parkway, and because it's a boulevard there on that part of Crinkle Route, there's no parking there either. If that's a factor, 2 is by the shelter, cars park along there, and it's more populated around the shelter.
Okay, Chris?
I would just say for either park, I would maybe, because these are new coming to Fitchburg and we're not used to having them here yet, visibility and getting the word out, I think is pretty valuable. So if that meant looking at, the parking lot where the 3 is, for example, but locating it to the other end where it was a more visible spot, I would have no qualms with, using 2 parking spots. I think that's a more than worthwhile trade-off because we get the extra visibility, which is great here at the beginning, and nobody's probably going to miss that one extra spot.
Yeah, I'll second that. The west end of that tennis court parking lot would be better than the east end of it.
So this number 3, but shifted left to that left corner.
Right next to the main road, the main entrance road.
And same general idea. If something goes in Swan Creek, being some of the initial locations, being in a highly visible spot, I think it would be beneficial.
Yeah, and you might, when you go back around and look again, look where are the street lights on Crinkle Route, and that might be a good guide for sighting as well. Anybody?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that input. The nighttime lighting. Is a yeah.
Yeah, there is a street light there.
Well said.
Yeah. Anybody else? So you've got the input, we're not voting.
And yeah, maybe there would be no action
No.
needed if,
Our
are you getting
discussion-
the information you need, Phil?
Absolutely, I am.
Our discussion was so great, there's no controversy.
Any thoughts, Scott, of adding a parking, or a light into that tennis court parking lot by the little gazebo shelter thing there?
We could take a look at that, Patrick.
Yeah, because there's an old-time fluorescent light under that shelter, and it's very dim, and even when that
Right.
thing works, it doesn't light up anything.
Very good.
Talk to the fire station, number one. They put lights on their building that blast all the way down, half a mile down the road.
Well lit, yes.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Very
Okay,
good, very good.
so now we are going back to 5C, Resolution R 14822, amending the 2022 park fee budget, drinking fountain at Dog Park, updated.
And this, if I might, Sue, was, it's the second time around. The Park Commission did approve it the first time, if I recall. It was approved by Finance, but then it got to the council and it failed. So now they're re-referring it, I guess, if you would.
Something, what was it, 5,
Yeah, it,
5-2-1?
well,
Is that
5-2 with
That
one
makes 8, right?
abstention. 5-2 with
5-2-1,
one abstention, yeah.
which is not enough, it needed
No,
6.
it needed, yep, you need
And-
two-thirds vote.
And just because here, I want to motion approval on this. Yeah,
So really, well, and I guess I would like to share, because there was questions, and I think you may even brought it up, Patrick, but at the council meeting, there was questions about the $40,000 and where that came from. So I did include an updated memo that does provide some prices to how we came to that 40,000 for clarity, so.
Okay. So Patrick provided a motion for approval. A second? Anyone?
let me clarify my motion,
Okay.
but I wanted to grab it. I am motioning for approval of this with the stipulation, as stated before, that it is completed and available to the public in the year 2022, which is the intention from the dog park advocates. Hey, work it out. Get it done quick. The park has been there for, what, 3-4 years or so?
Given that this is August, are you?
I don't care. That was the stipulation
Well,
before.
then-
I wanna just include that in my motion. Yes, it puts the heat on a little bit, but the park has been waiting a long time for this.
Well, given that stipulation, is there a second to this motion as stated?
That was the original motion.
I would just say it's in the resolution that
The
FDPA
funding.
has committed $84.50 if the work can be done in 2022. So
Yeah.
it looks like that's already in the resolution.
Yeah, it is. I'm just emphasizing it. And actually, the dog park advocates, not just the 8450, but 10,500 in total, based on what has already been contributed. So somehow that number seems to be getting forgotten.
So it's already in the
Yep.
resolution.
Well, it states that the Fitchburg Dog Park Advocates' commitment of $84.50 is contingent on the project being completed in 2022.
Well, which effectively means if you want the money, get it done this year. So that's the better deal, right?
No doubt, no doubt. It's gonna be a push.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, Heidi has seconded, so at this point, now,
Okay, discussion. I want to point something out. In my neighborhood, yes, it's the 4th of August. In my neighborhood, an entire reconstruction project of something like a mile of South Scion Road has not started yet. It's going to start in either mid-August or by the end of August and get done by November. So Public Works is okay with that. It seems very strange to us.
Only because they had it in the queue 9 months ahead of time.
And we got to publicly
Well, we're
bid this
much-
and engineer it and all that.
Yeah.
This is a much bigger project, South Scion Road there.
Well, yeah, it's just not, it's just
The
not,
entire road
it's apples
reconstruction
and
has not
oranges.
started yet.
yeah. Well, we've been presented with this resolution as it's worded,
Yeah.
so we're stuck with it, and if it doesn't get done, then what happens, we'll find out. If it's, if we're unable to complete it because contractors aren't available, we'll find out what
Then-
we do in 2023.
Then technically, if it's held to it, then the dog park advocates would not be required to provide the money, and it would all be on the city. So, as I say, this is a better deal.
So does that mean we don't approve it if we don't get the money?
I don't know. Couple questions, as I asked at, I think it was actually 2 meetings ago, wasn't it, for us? Has Joran verified that the right electrical voltage source is available in that green pedestal box
Right.
for a well pump? Okay. And is it absolutely necessary that the pressure tank, assuming that the one apparently that's underground, I've never seen it because it's underground apparently, but he has run the water, he used a generator, ran the pump that's down in the well casing and got water out of it to get that water test, because you gave us the copy of the water test, which passed. Is it necessary to have the pressure tank underground? In other words, if it's necessary to replace the underground one, is it necessary to have a new one underground? Which I would think it'd be cheaper to have it above ground. Could save some money.
We'll keep that in mind, that's for
Okay.
sure. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. If it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, you got water out of it to pass the test already, so maybe the underground pressure tank is fine. Hasn't been in use in quite a few years, but he got a good water test out of it.
Okay?
So, just so I understand, if this project is not completed in 2022, then the dog park board is not obligated to contribute to the project, but the city is obligated?
That'll be, I think, in my experience, that the city would feel, I don't know how receptive they would be to be obligated to it if it isn't completed, so.
That's
I think it's
what I'm
really
saying. I don't know what our vote
Without-
to.
well,
That would seem to be the implication.
I think your vote is that it gets done, as the resolution indicates, in 2022 to secure the money from the Fitchburg Dog Park advocates, but if it doesn't get done in 2022, then it's all kind of, it's mute, it's,
Yeah,
we have to come back and
Yeah,
get funding and all
right.
that
It's
kind
the
of stuff.
process starts all over again to discuss what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it.
Maybe, it's kind of undetermined.
Well,
I
you
mean,
can't,
the sentence reads that the FDPA has committed the 8450 if it can be done, so we'd be at a loss for the 8450, but the rest we'd still be on the hook for.
No, how would we'd have to come back and try and get the funding that is not included with, the Fitchburg Dog Park advocates are gonna give $84.50 towards the total cost of the project. If we don't receive that funding, then we're not gonna have enough funds in order to complete the project, so we would need to go back to the council to say, hey,
Right.
we
Yeah.
gotta,
For
Yeah.
another budget amendment if
Yeah,
necessary.
right.
And it
Right.
depends.
Yeah.
so I think it's just.
So we'd be on the hook for 8450. So I mean,
well,
in addition to whatever else we're on the hook for.
yeah, but I don't, so the council
That would have to be
it goes
approved,
back to the
yeah.
council because it's a different set of dollars
Yeah, it'd be-
that is being asked for, and I think it starts all over
It
again.
does.
Yeah.
It would.
So, as is, we have something in front of us to vote.
I want to just mention again, just for the clarification, that the dog park advocates have actually contributed some money already. It isn't just $84.50, there's more, which is a total of $10,500. some money, I don't remember what, but has been spent already, or contributed already, I should say. I don't remember how.
Okay, so at this point, if there are no other questions or comments, we can vote. We had our motion, and do we have a second?
Heidi?
Heidi? Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Okay. So we're at communication?
Yes, I did want to share that the amendment to the contract for Enberg was approved by the council. And they're beginning to start to put together the bidding timeline and all of those kinds of things. So there'll be more information with that to come. Inclusive Playground ribbon cutting was a big success, I thought. The mayor was there, he spoke, both of the alders, Alder Radafrada and Gabriella were there, they spoke. Jake was kind of the MC, and you know, CI, which was a big contributor, and Oak Bank, which is a big contributor, and the Optimist Club were all there, so it really was a nice event. I will, and we'll kind of see it in the CIP amendments, but Alder Radafrada did include in her CIP actually a couple different items, a couple different shade structures for the inclusive, or for the splash pad, along with, and if we probably, let's jump right to that one if you don't mind. If you look at page 29, and related to, well, they did, one item of note is we're taking down the Hugo Jamestown fence that we just erected, because that was, that amendment to the CIP was approved.
There was 20,000 budgeted for that back when it was first approved.
23.
Do you know how much?
It
what?
was 23.
It cost 23 to put it up?
Yep.
Who actually installed that fence at Hugo Jamestown?
I don't know who the contractor was.
But it was an outside contractor,
Oh, yeah.
not Public Works
No,
or
no,
Parks?
it wasn't us, no.
Okay. At the council meeting, you mentioned that you had the equipment to remove the fence.
Mhm.
What kind of equipment?
Basically, probably a
Like
skid
backhoe
steer,
or what?
a skid steer and those kinds of things, right?
Oh, not a post pounder, post remover?
Not a post pounder, post
You
remover.
could still look into buying one of those, because there seems to be a use for it.
So then, Alder Radafrada, I think it's the third one from the bottom, the 2 additional shade structures for the splash pad were approved for 2023. And then the one right underneath it was an open air shelter for the inclusive playground. She did put that in for 2023, but it was delayed to 2024. So those are some additional updates on the CIP.
Okay, Patrick?
On number 6, the removal of the ball field fence at Hugo Jamestown, you are still proposing and arguing to surplus, scrap, sell that fence. At the same time, you are proposing to buy a brand-new fence for the fence repair that was in the budget, where you wanted an extra $5,000, so it's $10,000, to replace the ball field fence on the north field at McGaw Park.
That's correct.
And somehow you still don't like using the fence from one for the other.
That's correct.
Okay. I did see in your email that you sent out to all of us that when you contacted the insurance carrier, you said that the insurance carrier said that it was our preference of the fence height, and your objection is that, as I measured with my tape measure very accurately, the Hugo Jamestown fence is 5 feet high of the fence material itself. At McGaw Park, the fence material itself is 5 foot 9 inches high. When you measured it and took pictures, your tape measure was down on the ground a couple inches below the fence. That's why your measurements were a couple inches higher. Anyway, I still don't see that 9 inches is that much difference. The insurance carrier says that it is our preference. The council has ordered the fence, agreed and ordered unanimously that the Hugo Jamestown fence be removed. So that was their prerogative. I would assert that it is our prerogative and our decision, recommendation, however strong you want to put it, that it's our decision of how these fences are used, such as take one fence, use it at the other.
I have another question. Similar. Can we use that fence at the new dog park
No Stoner Prairie.
at North Stoner Prairie, or at Crescent Crossing? I mean, I know we are not doing the installation, but the contractor,
Yeah,
it's brand new.
right.
Because whatever they put up is being charged to us.
Whatever
Charged
they
to the
put-
city
mhm,
parks
mhm,
budget.
Right, correct.
Can you,
And
would you ask?
I can find out.
I would agree with that on the idea that if you still
But they,
consistently.
I don't know if they're doing cyclone, regular,
Well, that's what I thought they said
yeah.
when they
I
presented,
could-
It
I
probably
could-
that they were
I
doing
could,
a cyclone
I
fence.
could check on that.
Yeah.
If we still, for some reason or other that I would like to hear explained, can't direct the park department to take the fence from the one park and use it at the other park, if you absolutely won't do that, then yes, the Crescent Crossing No Stoner Prairie Dog Park fence, since those developers, like all of them, negotiate really hard for every last dollar they can get out of this, and they want credit paid by the city for the structures and I'm sure the fence and the facilities that they put in there, then I think some reverse negotiation would be appropriate here, where you say, okay, we, Park Commission and the city, have decided we're providing the fence because we happen to have one available all of a sudden, and you are going to use our fence available. We're providing the materials, and then therefore we don't have to pay them for them to buy a fence. We provide the fence and we get the full credit at full original cost of what it cost back in May to provide them the fence. But otherwise, I'd like it used at McGaw. And,
Well, I just would appreciate knowing what they'd say
Yeah,
to
Stoner
that
Prairie,
question.
right.
but I think it's our
From the
decision.
This is it's not an agenda item, so
Well, we're discussing and providing.
discussing
We
it,
can
so-
make it an agenda item at the next meeting if
Absolutely,
necessary.
Absolutely.
Well, by then you'll know the answer to the dog park question anyway, because I would assume
So
they'll know their answer pretty quickly too, as to how that works for them.
as far as advice again, I obviously have thought a lot about McGaw Park and the field there, the fence and everything. So I have 3, and then if not the 3, then 4 options for the McGaw fence. First option at McGaw fence is take the old fence off of the outside of the post, which apparently is the problem, and use the exact same fence on the inside of the post, which solves that problem because it is exactly the right height. Second option, use the fence from Hugo Jamestown, because in straightening the post will have to be straightened up and then could be pounded in a little more into the ground, which makes them a little shorter, so that the posts are stronger when they're straight. That makes the fence a little shorter, like about 9 inches shorter or so, and
Pound it
it'll
down
work
9
out
inches.
perfect. Third option, take the fence off of the outside of the post, take the posts away permanently. Now, I would suggest you talk with the Adult Softball League about that and see which of those 3 options they would like. Either use the same fence over, use a slightly shorter fence, or no fence. And if they don't like that, then throw a 4th option at them. Would they like to pay for a brand new fence of something like 5 foot 9 inches high?
Well,
Well, and
okay,
again-
we're
See
getting,
what
we're
their
getting deep
reaction
into the
Way-
weeds, and we
way
can't,
in the
we
weeds,
can't,
yeah.
we can't ask
Yeah.
a specific group to
Yeah.
pay for the facility.
Well,
Well,
and
see what they
at
say and then
the-
ask them to
let's-
reconsider the first 3.
At the end of the day, the dollars are in the operating budget to repair and maintain the fences that we have within the park system, and they're in need of repair, and so that's what we have the budget in there for, to get it repaired. Certainly, you know, if we want to take it to a vote, and, you know, I guess, you know, you could recommend to the council or whatever it might be, but I think from, you know, my perspective, with the adult softball, I prefer to have the height of the fence that is there for safety purpose. And I realize that, you know, CIVMIC said that it's up to us, but I guess that would be my recommendation and my preference. So.
And Heidi has a comment or question.
Well, I tend to agree with Scott that this technically isn't on the agenda, so it isn't something that we should really be taking action on, but I would like to suggest that maybe we do put it on the next agenda, because I do think it's something that's worth talking about. I guess I would like more explanation on why it can't be used in another capacity. So if we could put that on the agenda for next agenda to discuss, I would appreciate that.
Certainly.
Consider it done.
Yep.
And then I really
Thank
think
you.
we should conclude any further comments,
Please.
because
Yep.
we've
Yep.
gone beyond what we should.
Could
for-
I ask 2 questions?
If it takes 2 seconds.
Yeah, okay. If the 5-foot-high fence at Hugel Jamestown wasn't high enough, or if it was okay to be that height there, why does the other ball field at McGaw have to be higher? And the Hugel Jamestown fence didn't even have a yellow safety cap on it, whereas the McGaw fence has a yellow safety cap where if it's 5'9" or 5 feet and somebody reaches over it, the yellow safety cap is the safety part. And I'm kind of wondering on how the numbers work out when it costs $23,000 to put the Hugel Jamestown brand new fence up, but you've only got a $10,000 budget for all fence repair that somehow includes the McGaw Northfield fence.
So those are questions
Yeah.
to answer, to talk about
Yep.
next meeting. Okay. And Scott, you are there any other questions on any of the capital improvement amendments? Scott took us through them all, right?
The ones that were related to parks.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that's all I got.
All right. Anything on staff reports, Scott, that you'd like to tell us?
No, they're pretty comprehensive.
Patrick has a question?
On Jordan's, it says drinking fountain install pickleball courts -- complete. Is it, I haven't been out there in the last couple of days. Is it installed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it also says new playground in McGaw by pickleball courts. That has started?
No.
Oh, he's just working on getting ready for that.
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. On your report, the last page, you mentioned attended monthly IP committee meeting. If you remember, we said no abbreviations. That means inclusive playground? Okay.
That's
No
correct.
abbreviations. So the public can understand these things.
Sure.
All right. Excuse me. So, future agenda items, we've identified one. I'm sure there'll be more.
Oh, yeah.
Any others? Heidi, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry?
Heidi, do you have a question? Your little yellow hand is waving at me.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I forgot to put it back down. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's all right. Announcements, our next 2 meetings, September 1st and October 6th.
And I made sure that we don't get bumped out of the council chambers.
They can have trials in here.
Any idea how often court is held? Are they just random when they need it?
I
I
thought
mean-
they were pretty regular.
I thought they had some
I
kind
know-
of regular
well,
schedule, but I don't know
Valerie-
what it is.
Valerie's getting ready to take leave, so I think they,
Well, there'll probably still be court cases, but this is, somehow it is unusual that all of a sudden they have court at the same night that
right,
we're on.
right.
I don't know how
No
that worked
worries.
out.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Okay, Chris made the motion. Heidi seconded. All those in
It's
favor?
8:25.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Super duper.
Thank you.